So, but like, we need to explain the shout out to the ESPN News thing, because there was a definite, caste system at ESPN.
Sure.
I mean, like, they let you know from the moment you walked in whether they thought you were any good or they thought you were just an innings eater, right? Or you were low on the totem pole. They used to have the thing called the schedule that would come out, and it would tell you, what shows you were doing. Are you on Baseball Tonight? Are you NFL Live? Are you on SportsCenter? Are you doing Kenny's Wider World of Sports? Whatever, all the shows, SportsCenter, all this kind of stuff. And they broke it down into two lists. The top list was alphabetical of everyone that was mainly on SportsCenter or one of these other signature shows. And then a second list was put out with mostly the guys that hosted ESPN News. And the ESPN News shifts from 8 to 10, 4 to 7, 1 to 3, and so there was the A-list guys, and then below that was the ESPN News guys. And every time you got the schedule, you just looked and you're like, God, what does it take to be on that side of the schedule? Like, it was like a reward if you got on the higher chart. And I remember going to Vince, who was one of my all-time favorite ESPN executives, Vince Doria. I said, Vince, this is so pointless. Like, you're just making people feel bad because you want to. Can't we just put everybody together alphabetically, and then someone doesn't look at the schedule and feel like, I'm on the junior varsity here?
Right. And the ESPN News, I only did it a couple times. Me and Tarico did one early. I think I did another, but remember Bill Pito, he'd call it the box, because if you knew the configuration, there was this old newsroom, and in the far side of it, there was this glass, and that's where they did it with the newsroom as the backdrop. I'm going into the box.
Please don't feed the animals. Yeah.
And some people, it was like anything else. You graduate from whatever they think you are. I remember being told, have no aspirations of ever being on SportsCenter. You work for ESPN2. And that was back when, the whole story to that is funny, because when ESPN2 started, they rolled out the show called Sports Night, and it was going to be like SportsCenter for people who are stoned. That was kind of, I think, what they were going for.
Well, that was the Magic 8-Ball jacket with Keith, right?
Yeah. They're still covering all the standard sports, but we're also going to do some other sports that, most people don't pay as much attention to, right? Bungee jumping, whatever. And so it was Susie Kolber and Keith Olbermann at the front. The backup people were Stuart Scott, Bill Pito, and Deb Kaufman. And they did what was called the Smash.
The Smash.
And I wasn't there yet. Okay. I was second wave. So Keith went back to Dan on Channel 1. Stuart moved up to be next to Susie, and they needed one more guy, and they hired me. I was selling long distance for MCI at the time in Seattle. So that's, just a natural path to network television. You want to sell some long distance, save people money on cost per minute. And I was freelancing for like 4 years trying to get to ESPN. Only ESPN. I was like really stupid, didn't try any other stations.
This is really important, okay? Because people think there's a system in place and it's an organized process. It's not. Like, you literally sent in tapes with cover letters to the Al Jaffe, who was at that time the talent coordinator. How many times?
Well, it all started with I worked at the Seattle station as a gopher, moved up to a producer, moved up to a writer, and then finally got on TV, right? And I wanted to be more like serious news, believe it or not. People won't buy that, but you and I talk all the time on the side about other more important things than this show. And that was where, I'd always studied history and politics, and that was where my head was. But I got the opportunity to do local sports because we had a 5-day newscast. It was the 10 o'clock news, an hour ahead of the rest. Good looking 11, KST Washington. And we always joked, if there's news on the weekends, it's news to us. That was our inside joke about our station, right? A little small indie station, right? We showed MASH. That was our thing. They had a weekend show. I played football, so now I'm doing sports, right? And the 1989 Super Bowl, Joe Montana to John Taylor, left to right post to beat the Bengals. John Candy on the sideline, the whole thing,
20
right?
to 16, the final score.
Really
Jerry Rice, your MVP. Yeah.
Yep. I was very proud of my little 5-minute local sports that night. I just took a flyer and said, I'm going to send this tape to ESPN and see what happens. I sent it to the wrong guy, actually. I just knew a name out there. And he sends it to Al Jaffe. Jaffe calls and says, that was pretty good tape. we want to see if that was a fluke. Send me another tape. So I sent him my next best show, whatever that was. I go back for the interview. This is 1989, 90, somewhere in that range. And I don't get hired. Somehow decide to quit that local job because I was standing up to the man. It's a long story, not time here. And now I have no job. I just quit a TV job, but ESPN knows who I am. Right? I was a little full of myself about that probably. Next job I had was making garbage cans because I used to be a garbage man. Yeah. Then I sold prepaid legal insurance. Then I got on with MCI. So for like 3 years, I held these various jobs paying the Honda bill and whatever I had to pay while freelancing. Anytime ESPN would call, they would call me, hey, go interview Gary Payton, go do this, go get Griffey. And I was kind of like their Seattle correspondent, but I had no job, right? Years go by and I'm kind of giving up, like, are they ever gonna, do this? So I sent John Walsh a letter, John Walsh, the exalted leader of ESPN, or one of them. And I said, John, please check the appropriate box. I'm trying to determine my future. And the first box said, stand by the mailbox, contract's on the way. Second one said, keep up the freelance work. Third one said, we'll hire you about the time ESPN 5 hits the air. And they checked the middle box. In the meantime, I don't know this is going on, but Keith is about to leave ESPN 2 and go to ESPN 1 again. And it all just kind of worked out. I was in front of them and they're like, fuck it, the guy bugs us so much, let's just hire this bastard,
And obviously, they were right to hire you because you went on to have an unbelievably career there. My story is completely different. Like, I never sent ESPN a tape. I never sent them now it's a link. You actually had to send a frickin' VHS tape in the mail, Yep. Yeah, I never did that. I got a call one day. I was working in St. Louis. I'd been there less than 6 months. I was coming back from a stellar interview of a high school sprinter who just run the fastest 400 for a 10th grader in the city of St. Louis. Real riveting stuff.
I like that.
And
hey, before you get to continue, just while you bring that up, Tom McCollum, our good friend who I worked with on all the main events forever, his daughter is going to be big time. She's a miler. She was the fastest. She beat all the seniors as a freshman. Then she won a national title. I still
think of Tom as a freshman, so that's problematic for me.
Yeah, no, because he's thin and can run. But I just want to get her notice. Right. But yeah, go back. So they noticed you by accident.
Somebody had sent them a tape. I don't know how. And I got a note. Remember those old Post-it notes that said, "Hey, so and so called."
Sure.
Instead of there was no voicemail, or we didn't have cell phones or anything like that. So I got a call. I said, "Hey, call Al Jaffe," and it says 203. Now I'm from Connecticut, so I knew at that point that the entire state of Connecticut's area code was 203 at that time. So I'm like, who is calling me from Connecticut that I don't know? And I'm looking at this name, Al Jaffe. How do I know this name? And then it dawned, oh my God, this is the frickin' guy that you need to get into the door at ESPN. Like, holy shit.
That's amazing. So they recruited you based on seeing you in a different tape.
Correct. So then I call him and he's like, hey, we want to bring you up. And you'll love this. I don't think I've even told you this story. We're starting this thing called ESPN 2. And we want to know if you want to be a part of it. And I'm like, yes. Like, yeah, what do you need? Well, we need you to come up audition. And they said, but are you under contract? And I'm like, yeah, I'm under contract at my station, but I'm like the fill-in guy. They're like, well, we need your station to approve you coming up for an interview because that's tortious interference with a contract, blah, blah. I'm like, wow. Oh, no problem. So I go up to my general manager and said, hey, ESPN, whatever, I'm from Connecticut. I'd like to go home and audition for this. And they were like, no, because if we do it for you, we have to do it for everybody. And I was like, come on, man. So I had to wait. I said, I can't go. And then they called again when they started ESPN News, and I was just like, screw it, I'm going. I'm not even telling them. And then that's how I got the offer. But the other thing that was so crazy about those days back at ESPN, and I think it's still the same, is you remember at the end of the year or the beginning of the year, they came out with the seniority list for vacations, when you could take your vacations. You've been there so long, you get this much time, so long, you get this much time. But it was all done on seniority. Like the people that were there, and frickin' Boomer and Bob Lee were always at the top of the list. I'll choose Christmas, Thanksgiving, July 4th, every legal holiday, and the entire month of August.
Yeah.
You know, like that's what
Flag
they
Day.
got to choose from. And then when it got to us, okay, you have 3 days in November and an April 3rd. Those are your choices. Fine, I will take those. So every year when the vacation list came out, I looked at it to see if I had been there in 92, who would I be ahead of seniority-wise so I could pick the better vacations? And it pissed me off every year. Every year.